All right. So there's something called the Columbia Plateau. And you see it here in gray. And it actually covers into Idaho and into Oregon. What's really interesting is that Washington State has appellations that go into both Idaho and Oregon. And it might seem kind of silly to do that, but when you think in terms of geological history instead of geopolitical boundaries between certain states, it actually makes a lot of sense that some AVAs will share characteristics across state lines. Now, the Columbia Plateau is basically made up of basalt. Anyone know what basalt is? Yes, a dark volcanic rock. It's like a dark gray kind of. A little bit darker than that gray on the map there. So the bedrock for eastern Washington here is basalt. So we have volcanic matter that's working its way up, right? What's really interesting is see how it kind of just skips all of western Washington there. And it follows that Columbia River, what they call the Columbia River Basin. And in red there, those are all the volcanoes. All up and down Washington and Oregon there and up into Canada. So this one right here, Mount Hood. This is, pretty sure that's Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier. Actually, no, this is Mount Adams, this is Mount St. Helens, and that is Mount Rainier. All right, so imagine 15,000 years ago, got these active volcanoes. We have a big glacier covering up ancient volcanic eruption that had turned into a basalt rock on this huge plateau, right? Okay, so we have what's called the glacial lake, the Missoula Glacial Lake. And what it did is there was a big ice dam. Anyone seen Game of Thrones? Yeah. You know the big ice wall? Yeah. Imagine that ice wall, but there's a lot of ice behind it, but it's melting. The only thing holding it up is that ice wall. Well, it's melting. The glacier's melting. Temperatures are rising, right? Eventually, inertia kicks in. It can't hold it back. It releases the floodwaters that have melted from that glacial lake. And you can just think in terms of kind of what a cataclysmic event this was. It took 55 years for all of the water from that glacial lake to make its way to the Pacific Ocean.
That's a lot of water.
But with enough force that within 55 years, it completely changed the landscape of eastern Washington and gouged out that Columbia River